So we're back recording again.
All right.
So, and in terms of painting, I mean, you've got a wonderful, it's almost a gallery, this house, which I absolutely love. And there's lots of different styles, but the question I wanted to ask you was when did painting and politics merge for you?
Well, that's a really good question. I guess from the beginning, when I restarted, or recuperating from injuries in the Army, I just started painting. And at that time, I'd been radicalized. I think I spent my college years, which weren't college years, but when I was supposed to be in college.
The dope smoking years, we
the
call them?
The dope smoking years, yeah, the dope smoking tour.
Yeah, we'll edit that out later.
No, that's okay, that's fine. I want people to know it was a lot weaker then. So it's just a
But did you inhale?
I did not have sex with that joint. No. Anyway, what I can remember, right? So, so I got involved with the Students for Democratic Society, otherwise known as the SDS, in '68. I think I joined a chapter in my 6-week sojourn at college for the first time, and was a member in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, which was a small chapter, but actually the college I went to was the first college north of, or on this side of the Mississippi to be occupied by black students. And I don't mean occupied in the sense they paid tuition, they just took over the school, which was a great inspiration. And then south of us was Iowa City, which was called Berkeley of the Midwest, and had a huge radical population there. It still does in some ways, but so I got involved with the SDS there, lots of demonstrations, that sort of thing, and radicalized, I guess was the term back then. Although white radicals were sort of pseudo radicals, because none of us would admit Marx was appealing to us. It was strictly an anti-war kind of thing, right? And if we'd had any balls back then, we said, yeah, we're communists, but that's not how it was, because of the oppression and stuff.
And what does the 60s mean to you in terms of your own political journey?
Well, activism works, I guess. You pay a price for it, but if somebody doesn't do it, the world goes to hell a lot faster than it's going, Certainly it's always an education. When you're working with people in committees and that sort of thing, it's a socializing sort of thing. And, getting out in the streets and throwing rocks and Molotov cocktails is kind of fun every once in a while. So it shows you that thought has to be changed into action according to Marxist principles. It doesn't do any good if you sit home and you hypothesize about the revolution. And certainly there were many issues, mostly among blacks, because this country's built on black slavery. But at the time, the war was raging and people were coming home in body bags, and there's nothing like that to motivate you. And I was certainly draftable that time. I just missed it. So.
I should point out that Globe Trotsky is an armchair revolutionary, so strictly from the theoretical school of, but I take your point that there's
let's just say you're in the ads and prop department.
Yes.
You're not on the front line, yeah.
It's interesting that you talk about those days, and it strikes me now that, it's certainly on the left, there is no comparable movement at the moment among students. Why have we got to this stage in society where, people who go through education are not being radicalized?
Well, I mean, it's a special case back during Vietnam. It was a single issue sort of thing for white people. I think in the long run, save for some really thoughtful leftist people, the plight of the black people in this country was not that significant. So there's this bifurcation which closes after the war ends, and all the white radicals went back to their middle class homes, and while the black people were still in the same condition when they came out. So how do you account for that? Because whites are still affluent and blacks are still poor, but there's no war going on. So now that they're trying to oppress the student vote, I think you're going to see more opposition to the government. But back then it was a life and death sort of thing, I think, for white people.
And yet the wars haven't ended,
No, of course not. But that's the funny thing. When I was draft age, everybody hated the draft, but the draft had this effect of democratizing and mixing people involuntarily, but they disbanded the draft, and now the American military is just a mercenary force, basically. It's like in one of those strange science fiction things where you colonize the rest of the universe, with your jackboots.
And how would you describe the state of U.S. democracy at the moment?
Well, there is none, really. I mean, it's just a sham. One man, one vote never existed in this country because there's always conditional things about, especially when the vote, you had to be a property owner back in the day. You couldn't be a woman, you couldn't be black, couldn't be Indian. And that, in that sense, is improved, but at the same time, corporations have started to manage politicians rather than the other way around. And that shift probably happened around the turn of the last 1900s, I think, when Theodore Roosevelt was pretty Democrat as a Republican in terms of people's rights, but after that, I think things went down. And right now, there is really, it's a mockery of Athenian democracy anyway. And we know that nothing is perfect, but it's deteriorated quite a bit with gerrymandering by both parties and, the sense that there's no independent party. It's two sides of the same coin politically. So, yeah, you can go to the polls and vote, and then we have a universal vote now, but you're voting for the same party with two different names, basically.
And any take on how the media
polices itself?
Well, involves itself in democracy or interferes?
It makes me laugh because you look at CNN and MSNBC, and they're criticizing Fox all the time, but they're kissing the same asses at different times. So line up, to the corporations that sponsor them and put adverts on their thing. So the media is a joke. In fact, that's the saddest thing about it because the media is supposed to be independent, and it's not.
Hold politicians to account.
To
hold politicians to account.
That
should be its role.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah.
I'm just going to change the angle again so we get a bit of